Good morning. As Ron said, I'm Jen LaMaster, and I am the Associate Provincial Assistant for Pre-Secondary and Secondary Education for the Midwest Province. And this morning, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. William Parham, also known as Dr. P. He is a professor in counseling, in the counseling program, and interim director of the doctoral program in educational leadership for social justice here at Loyola Marymount. Dr. P has devoted his professional career to teaching, training, clinical practice, administrative, and organizational consultational venues. He is a licensed psychologist and is board certified in counseling psychology by the American Board of Professional Psychology. His generosity of time and talent beyond academics is rich and varied. Dr. P currently serves as the inaugural Director of Mental Health and Wellness for the National Basketball Players Association. He is a member of the Mental Health and Wellness Task Force of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. He has also worked with performance artists in drama, theater, and music. Dr. P's research and practice emphasizes personal empowerment, discovering and cultivating innate talents, and looking for hidden opportunities in every situation, particularly, as we'll hear this morning, in trauma experiences. Talk about finding God in all places. Today, we welcome Dr. P to share his experience and offer reflections on our journey with youth. So please join me in welcoming Dr. William Parham to the stage.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to Southern California and LMU. Is this a gorgeous campus or what? All right. My goal here is to be very interactive, and so I will probably move around. I realize I don't just rely on a lavalier, but I'll try to do the best. But I have zero intention of having you sit down there and listen to me talk. I really do mean that. You're here for a wonderful colloquium, and I understand it's a rich history, and all of you are representatives of the finest institutions in Jesuit education. But this is also going to be a moment of self-reflection. I often go and teach my students several mantras that they have to memorize. I also teach them that the goal of memorizing is not to remember, recall, or to regurgitate. The goal of memorizing is to forget. Forget meaning to get so deeply ingrained you don't even think about it. What I want you to do is to consider memorizing the following mantra, which I think is consistent with the morning prayer. A person will never see their reflection in running water. It is only when the water is still will their reflected image begin to emerge. I want you also to take a look at the lead slide up here. Who can read the lead slide for me? Specifically, the letters and the words in gold. Anybody? Yes, your name, please. Nice to meet you. Promised treasures. Thank you. Well, what does that mean to you? Anybody? Yes, sir. Hope. Anybody else? All right, now you're being shy, so I'm not going to do what I do with my students are calling because I don't know who you are, but let's go. One of the things I really want you to consider when you look at promised treasures, I specifically use the word discover. Those words imply that there's something there to see or to discover. It's already there. We're going to get more into that in a minute. So again, welcome, good morning. And it is really nice. I understand that y'all haven't been together since, 2019. So are you happy to be together and see each other in 3D? Oh, come on, you can do better than that. There we go. Again, thank you for the invitation to add my 2 cents to this August group. And my goal is always very modest. Goal is simply to get you to go, once or twice. Because if I can get you to go, can everybody say, a little louder, please? See, now you know you have that skill to do it. And as we go through this presentation, feel free to be as loud as you were with this Don't just do it silently like you're embarrassed. If it so moves you, if something I say hits you, I invite you to go, can I hear it one more time? Very good. All right. So let's get started. And the first goal up there is perspective. For me, this is real important. I often like to start off with something funny. And this is Abigail, Abner, and Lucille. See, Abigail and Abner have been married for years and years, and they're sitting in their kitchen eating some breakfast. Abigail finishes and walks over to the sink and starts rinsing dishes. She looks out the window of her kitchen and says, Abner, what in the world is Lucille doing? She's up here hanging her sheets. I'm old school with, the clothesline. She's out there hanging her sheets. She must use dirty water. Those sheets are filthy. What's she air drying them for? So Abner kept eating. A week later, they're still enjoying their breakfast. Abigail gets up, does her morning ritual at the sink, and says, that Lucille is still using dirty water or no Clorox. Those sheets are filthy. What's getting into her? Third week, they're at their regular morning ritual. Abigail finishes, goes to the sink, and says, Abner, come here, quick, look at this. She must have found some soap. She's using something different. Maybe the water is clean. Abner, still at the table, wipes his mouth and walks over, and she says, honey, what do you think happened? Abner puts his dishes into the sink and says, sweetheart, I got up this morning and cleaned the windows. You see, what she's been seeing and believing was seen through a lens that wasn't clear. But it was believable. And she went on for 2 weeks swearing that Lucille was doing something wrong. Not taking ownership for the fact that she wasn't seeing very clearly herself. How many of you have ever seen the sunrise and the sunset? Let me see a show of hands. Oh, everybody. Okay. Wow. How many of you, and I need you to tell the truth here. This is a Catholic place. I need you to tell the truth. How many of you have been up so early you've seen the sun rise? Whoa. Okay. Anybody seen the sun set? Anybody fall in love? Whoa. I can feel that energy. Okay, anybody fall in love at sunset specifically? Yeah. And we had, you had a big smile on your face. All right. Uh-oh, I don't want to hear that one. All right. Now, if I had the time and we had the luxury and I asked a few of you, where for you has the sunset been the absolute most stunning? Each of you could tell me, and likewise with the sunrise. For me, one of the sunrise I've seen was in Haleakala, Hawaii. Absolutely breathtaking. You really feel like you're up there with the good Lord. It was just absolutely breathtaking. What time does the sun go down now that we've had the equinox around this time of the year? Anybody? Where? 8:30? Okay, let's say 8:30. And what time does it rise in the east, roughly? All right, let's just say 6. All right. So I need you to put all of that in door number 1, and I want you to open up door number 2, which is an invitation to go back to the 4th grade. Again, this is a large group, so I will answer the question for you. What did you first learn in the 4th grade about the solar system? What we all learned is that the sun is the center of the universe, that there are 9 planets. Today's generation says 8. I'm old school. I'm going with 9. Earth is 3rd rock from the sun, and Earth does 2 things, revolves around its axis and around the sun. Has mostly water, allegedly the only planet with humans. Is that what we all learned in the 4th grade? Can I get an amen? Now help me out with something. In door number 1, you've seen the gorgeous sunrise and sunset. You've seen it at certain times of day. You've seen it rise in the east and set in the west. Now, door number 2, you're saying something a little different. What you're saying is that, well, the sun doesn't really move. What's moving instead is the earth around its axis and around the sun. Which of these doors, ladies and gentlemen, constitutes truth? This is not a trick question, and the answer is not both. I need to see a show of hands knowing a third of you aren't going to vote. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's the same thing. So, how many of you think door number 1, sunrise, sunset, constitutes truth? Raise your hands proudly. Oh, come on, proudly now, not like, I know he's going somewhere. Okay, how many of you think door number 2, the solar system, is true? Okay, thank you. And how many of you didn't vote? Third of the room. Okay. The facts are, not my personal opinion, neither of you have ever seen the sun rise in the east and set in the west. What you've been looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is an illusion, because the sun doesn't move. And it's an illusion that's believable, and there's groupthink that says it must be true. We were all taught that, and we subsequently embrace it and pass that message on in narrative and in song. The sun has never moved. You happen to be in Southern California. If we're up in Seattle, I'm not dogging Seattle, but it rains all the darn time up there. Anybody from Seattle or thereabouts? Okay. I don't mean to dog. I love Seattle, but it rains. I call it Atlanta Oz because it's always so green, like emerald. But even in the worst part of a storm, plain dripping wet, no evidence of the sun, in fact, evidence to the contrary. Where is the sun? Exactly where the good Lord put it. So because you can't see the sun doesn't mean it's not there, ladies and gentlemen. It simply and only means you can't see it. And where am I going with this analogy and perspective? How many of your friends, I know you're a perfect group, I understand, so none of this has to do with you, but how many of your friends, wink, wink, have ever lost confidence? Can I see a show of hands? How many of your friends have ever lost motivation, willpower? A little bit more personal question, self-esteem. How many of the kids that you work with would answer the same way? I'm here to invite you as a psychologist I understand what you mean. But if I were to invite you to consider, God forbid you believe anything I say, although everything I say this morning was factually true. I'm not being arrogant. I just want you to think about what I'm saying. What if I were to invite you to consider that it is not humanly possible to lose motivation, to lose confidence, to lose willpower, or to lose self-esteem? I'm not saying that you don't feel that way or your friends don't feel that way. Not you, I'm sorry. I want to acknowledge that's how you legitimately feel. And there's a whole lot of reasons that we'll get to that support that notion. But you also believe that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that's an illusion. Little orphan Annie was dead wrong when she said, the sun will come out tomorrow. That's a lie. The sun is always there, and we have access to it. But we've been incentivized to not tap into that treasure chest. The last analogy and perspective is this. It's gorgeous out here in Southern California. If all of you stood on our bluff, our famous bluff, and looked up in the sky right now when it's sunny and bright, how many stars would you see? Maybe one, the sun. Okay, without getting technical. That's true, though. How many other stars would you see? You wouldn't see any. Now, let's assume we had the stamina physiologically, which we don't, to keep our neck up like this, and all of a sudden it's midnight. How many stars would we see at that point? Probably 1 billion. In LA at nighttime, you would. Okay, don't dog LA. All right. But I get it. You're right. There was a time in the past you couldn't. But the question is, do stars come out at night, or is it the darkness that illuminates the stars that are already there? See, ladies and gentlemen, it's the darkness that illuminates the stars. So tragedies and trauma are some of the biggest places to withdraw emotional wealth, even though some folks don't even know they have an ATM card. I'm going to leave this slide and speed up a little bit. Questionable notions asserted as truth often take on the air of believability. And when left unchallenged, not only do people start to believe it, but they start to pass it down through generations, and therein lies some of the challenges. So in the name of the Father is this one. Since this is a Jesuit function, I just put up 3 scriptures that for me highlight what we're talking about. Oh, excuse me. Peter 4, 10, 11, each of you has received a gift to use to serve others. Be good servants of God's various gifts of grace. 1 Corinthians 12, a spiritual gift is given to each of us so that we can help others. See, the best way to find ourselves is to lose yourself in the service of others. Our last scripture, instead, continue to encourage one another every day. So where do you go looking for those treasures? See, anybody hear the story of the Wizard of Oz? See, Dorothy found herself in the land of Oz, and she wanted to get home, so they said, well, you have to go to the wizard, and he can tell you how to get home. So she and Toto went on the yellow brick road. Along the way, found the Tin Man, Straw Man, and Cowardly Lion. One needing brains, one needing heart, one needing courage, all allegedly not with them. So they said, let's all go to the land of Oz. They finally get to Oz. when they finally get to Dorothy, anybody remember what the wizard told her? Close your eyes and repeat silently to yourself, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. She clicked her heels and woke up in her bed in Auntie M's home. Now, what I really need you to consider in that story, that wasn't about a tornado or hurricane in Kansas. There is no place called Oz. And you don't have to go to a wizard to tell you how to get home. See, when Dorothy went to the wizard was Dorothy. And what the wizard told her, you don't have to go down some yellow brick road journey, you have to turn inside yourself. Going home is in here. The talent that you need, you don't have to go outside of yourself down some yellow brick road journey to Oz to find a brains, heart, and courage you already have, innately gifted to all of us by the Creator. So offered for your consideration is that context is everything. I don't do anything, and you can't really understand folks until you understand the bigger context. So COVID and the various strains continue to fuel substantial lifestyle changes. And now we have the monkeypox, and tomorrow it'll be something else. This is the new reality. There is no do-over key. We aren't going back. We aren't. Rising hate crimes, Black Lives Matter, hashtag Me Too, hashtag Stop Asian Hate, the anti-Semitic hate crimes. And in 2022, there have been 250 mass shootings. We're just halfway through the year. Global unrest with Ukrainian and Russian. Supply chain, predicted global recession, human rights violations that we won't get into. All of those things seem like they're over there somewhere, but they're very much here because they impact the human spirit. And so what I also want you to understand is, any of you get daily hassles? Can I see a show of hands? Any of you ever had a daily hassle? How many of you get frustrated? How many of you say, oh, this damn job? Come on, now, come on now. There we go, there we go. It's not going anywhere outside this room. All right. But all of that is context. I want to get back to where we started, that we are innately endowed by the Creator with gifts we haven't begun to appreciate. Let me give you just a 30-second history lesson. See, historically, we as psychologists have given you mismessaging. We really have not been honest with you. And this is the truth. And an apology came out by the American Psychological Association not a year ago, talking about the misinformation that was spewed in the last 150 years. I won't go into that. But historically, mental illness has been seen as something bad. It is also was heavily influenced by medicine. The medical model is rooted and founded on principles of pathology, which is the study of disease, which is something's wrong with you. Let's find out what that thing is, and let's remove it. That's a watered-down version, but that's exactly what we see here. So when you go to your shrink and you say to him or her, I've lost confidence, motivation, self-esteem, most trained psychologists, including me when I was starting out, said, well, I can help you build your confidence. I can help you rediscover the motivation you once had and find it that you lost it. That's absolute nonsense. But it's believable. Because when you walk around thinking that you've lost something, the natural reaction is try to go find it. And people go a lot of places to find it, including places they shouldn't be going, because that leads to other issues. So why is that important? Because there are some other alternatives. Last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and in my role here at the university, but also with the Mental Health and Wellness Program of the National Basketball Players Association, we adopted a mantra that's going to be our mantra from here forward, and that is our mental health is actually our mental wealth. You see, when we frame mental illness differently, see, historically, mental illness is framed in what we call a dichotomous experience. Dichotomous means either or. You're depressed or you're not, you're anxious, you're not, PTSD or no. And we begin to articulate that mental wellness is really on a continuum from 1 to 10. You see, 8 to 10 are people who are functioning quite brilliantly, quite nicely, empowered across domains of their lives. Family, work, careers, business, spiritual practice. And they can't anticipate the future, but they have confidence in their genius to manage whatever comes down the pike. Then we have the people from 4 to 7 who are doing pretty well overall, but it may be one area or two where they're struggling and spending more time than they would like. Relationships, finances. And then there is a group from 1 to 3 who are struggling mightily across domains of their lives, and those are the ones who really need the help and support. But the other notion that's important here is not about obtaining mental wealth, mental health. It's how do you maintain it? So even for folks up in the 8 to 10, 5 years from now, new stuff happens in the world, you could slide down. So there are alternative views, and again, we feel and are promoting that your mental health is your mental wealth. And what does that really look like? It is a sum of the emotional vitality which all of us possess. And I have called them gems of inner strength. So your willpower, self-respect, self-preservation, sense of agency, pride, stamina, commitment, dedication. I'll just let you read the rest of it. Being a visionary, being happy, focused. All of those are gems and part of your treasure chest. Also offered for your consideration. Emotional wealth is also seen in your abilities to acknowledge and accept that life has trials and tribulations, some of which can feel quite overwhelming and all-consuming. And while these often unexpected and sometimes off-the-radar experiences of life challenges feel scary, confusing, and sometimes unrelenting, they inevitably lead persons to discover that they have a survival genius that they weren't even aware that they had. In psychology, we call it post-traumatic growth. One of the classes I teach here at the university is in trauma psychology, and that's a huge term. You will not find any trauma or tragedy in the world where there hasn't been some post-traumatic growth. Simply does not exist. So this is another place to find it. And what is survival genius? Is the untapped emotional, mental, physical tools that you can use to free yourselves. You can use to free yourselves, not the wizard, not some mythical figure in some castle. You are the wizard. From the clutches of despair, hit the reset button and find your way forward to a renewed sense of purpose and direction and optimism. So how do you do that, and what do we see? What we often see is that these untapped, when I was coming up in the African American community, some of our elders had mistrust for the banking system, so they literally would hide money under the mattress. And at the time it looked peculiar, but we understand why now they did that. One, they didn't trust for good reason. Two, they understood that there's going to be a rainy day some point, so you have to have some money stashed away somewhere. When in like manner, sometimes when we befall tragedy and ill circumstances, it's ugly, we don't want it, we pray to God, God, deliver me from this evil. And that's an innate knee-jerk prayer. But if we believe in the Creator, He knew that that was getting ready to happen to you. And we have led ourselves to believe that life happens to us. And why me, God? What God is reminding us in these situations is life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. And while you may not understand it at the moment, there's a reason for going through all of this. So in a similar way, we all have stashes of psychological strength and wealth that are not necessarily hidden in the good times, but hidden in the times of challenge. I'm not asking each of you, every one of you, to go outside and get yourself into trouble. Start ruminating on awful things that are going on in your life. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a reason and purpose that it is happening to you. So what do we do with this? Actually, this is what I want to do. I want you to read this last one, and I'll read it for you aloud. Whenever and wherever shadows are cast, it must mean that there's light nearby, because you can't cast a shadow without light. I don't care how dark and cloudy that shadow is, it cannot form without light. I'm inviting each of you to understand that the light about which I speak is inside each and every one of you, and it is inside of the people that you surround yourself with. We often tell athletes in the NBA, because once they get these millions of dollars, they have an entourage of people. People come out of the woodwork and claim that they're part of their extended family. So we tell athletes in that way, in that situation, we much rather you have 4 quarters and 100 pennies. See, both currencies add up to $1, but a quarter is 25 times the value of a penny. You don't need all these people hanging on. You need 4 people, a fistful of dollars, who can give you what you need. And one of them quarters should be somebody who you know is not going to tell you what you want to hear. As aggravating as you know what, but it is a source and a portal into the strength that you possess. So, real quickly, I have a few keys. The first key is to resist the urge to take the good times for granted. We all do that. Something like COVID reminds us, well, we're not as in control of our lives as we think we are. Our elders used to tell us all the time, you really want to put a smile on God's face? Tell him what you have planned. And I told many of my colleagues, and still, I said, God is laughing so hard up there, he is hurting his sides. COVID was an opportunity, as devastating as it was loss of lives. You can't go to births, can't go to funerals. I can't even begin to imagine what your personal experiences have been, but I know they weren't pleasant. But there is an opportunity to take a look at that, so don't take stuff like that for granted. Number 2, be ready to acknowledge and look at the disruptions in your own life. All of us have it, but we've been incentivized as both men and women. And when you break down further, elite athletes who I work with are celebrities, people who are LGBT, persons of color, women, persons with disabilities. We've all been incentivized to just pack it in, keep it tight, and move forward. And in order to be accepted, we're dutiful and do exactly that. Until COVID hits, until some big thing hits, and we're pushed to the ends of our emotional bandwidth and can't cope with this stuff anymore. So that's what we're going to alert you to. Take a look at the invisible tattoos of trauma. Anybody here have a tattoo? Wow. That's as much as the sun said. Again, in the interest of time, I'll speed up and I'll answer this. For those of you who do have a tattoo, it hurt like a son of a gun when you got it on, depending on where you got it, and how large and how gorgeous it looks. Many times while you were being inked, I have a couple myself, so I know. You ask yourself, why the heck did I do this? But when it's finished, it's symbolic, it looks good, but at no point can you go and erase it at all. What happens with trauma, particularly in young kids, each one of those emotions that comes up in terms of that trauma, in response to that trauma, is equivalent to an inkwell into which an artist, tattoo artist, dips his or her ink pen, draws out and etches that which is on your body. Well, those invisible trauma is in your soul. We call it the invisible tattoos of trauma. There's actually a classic study done in the mid-90s. And for those of you who don't know it, but as educators, I encourage you to find out about it. It's called the ACE study, ACE. Adverse Childhood Experiences is a big study by the Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente Hospital. Close to 18,000 patients across demographics, including good educations. Lots of findings, key of which is something I need all of you to understand. If all of you right now were to go into your mobile phone and go to your directory and randomly select, 100 people, the data are exceedingly clear, ladies and gentlemen, that 65 out of 100 of those people would have had from 1 to 4 adverse childhood experiences, the earliest of which, not uncommonly, would have occurred before the age of 10. 2/3 of the people that you know, and the fact that they're in your directory, people that you've embraced and known forever, are carrying around this stuff. I don't need to tell you about the abuse that's going on with athletes. Just look at the USA Olympics, gymnastics. Just look at what was going on at the University of Michigan. And I won't tell other stories of abuse. But that stuff is real, and a lot of people are carrying it around. So I go on record as saying everybody has baggage. And if that's true, which is code for it is, there's only 2 questions ever on the proverbial table of conversation. How many pieces of luggage do you have, and what's packed inside each bag? We all have it. Come to know the practice of stillness, not just being quiet, but literally still. Because when you're still, that allows you to listen differently to your body, mind, and spirit. If I were to ask you, how do you listen, I'm sure I would get a lot of close to true definitions. But if I were to invite you to consider that the key to maximizing what those 6 letters mean, the key to maximizing is in those 6 letters. You see, if you move around those 6 letters and listen, you come up with the word silent. So the best way to listen, ladies and gentlemen, is to be silent. The answers that you seek are here, not out there. The truth will surface if you give yourself permission to allow it to. Key number 4. Identify small groups of persons that you trust and in whom you can confide, and that they can confide in you. And really understand the principle that we are not put on this earth to be alone. We are put here to be in community. And while at many points they may be different, there are ties that bind. And the tie that binds all of us together is our abilities to tap into the emotional wealth that we have, even though we don't believe that we do. Key number 5, implement the variety of strategies that you have for healing. How many of you have work-life balance? I thought so. All right. How many of you would like to have work-life balance? Yeah. How many of you are willing to go to your boss and say, I demand work-life balance, and here's how I'm going to do that? Whoa. I just need you to understand, I'm not asking you to be a rebel. But we have been brainwashed into believing that going on vacations, taking a break, reading a book, gardening, all those things are luxury items that we can get around to when we have honored our commitment to work 8 to 5. I want to be very clear, and I borrow from the famous Hall of Famer, Bill Russell, Boston Celtics, 11-time champion. His skill and the skill of the Boston Celtics back in the day was something to behold. In fact, he was a University of San Francisco graduate, Jesuit product. In his book, Russell's Rule, I believe it's on page 54, he goes on to say, having talent is wonderful, going to practice is cool, but curiosity is the oxygen of all success and accomplishments. So how do you tap into your curiosity again? You used it when you were a kid, but you've been incentivized to lower the flame. The answers that we seek about moving forward are hidden therein. Number 6, again, discover that life happens for you, not to you. And when you're in the middle of a crisis, whether it's health, financial, you look at that board and say, what the heck is he talking about? So again, I'm never wanting to downplay the struggles that we all have, and we do have them. My goal is to always acknowledge that space that you're in, but to realize that it's there, and you have the perspective to change how you think. You see, when you change the way you think about things, then the things you think about change. Let me say that one more time. When you change the way you think about things, then the things you think about change. So you can't change circumstance, but you can change how you respond to them. The 7th key, as I wind down, comes in the form of mantras. I invite my students, as I mentioned earlier, to have several mantras that they have to memorize. And essentially what a mantra is catchy phrases or sentences so that serve as prompts to get you into a mode of self-reflection. So fear can either mean face everything and run, or face everything and rise. You have a choice. Another one, I have hope in what can be. And hope is the absence of things you don't yet see, but you believe that are coming. Number 3, if I can see it and believe it, I can be it. There's a lot of science to suggest that that is absolutely true. Part of what keeps everybody in coast mode is that they have adopted the belief that their life is as good as it's going to get. Essentially letting you know that your ATM card doesn't work, and it does. Life is a question, and how you live it is the answer. This next one is one of my all-time favorites. I tell my students this all the time. I will cancel my subscriptions to everybody else's issues. Can I get an amen on that one? That'll take you to the grave sooner than anything. And why are you handling somebody else's issues? It's like them bringing their monthly bill to your house and asking you to pay it. Are you kidding me? The other reason I like this is because it reminds you that all of us play thief every day. When you are trying to solve somebody else's issues, you rob them of the opportunity to find out how to solve it themselves. It dishonors them by believing they don't have the emotional wealth and untapped genius to discover the blessings that the Creator gave them. In the final analysis, people can feel like they are being robbed of their joy, sense of purpose and direction and confidence. However, the toughest times, even with the most extreme, horrendous circumstances, cannot rob any individual from their ability to choose. And you can take that to the bank. I want you to tap into your emotional wealth. Each of you has that inside of you. And for those of you on a rainy day, here's a little bit piggy bank you can get. Nonetheless, here are some suggested readings. These are just suggested. I have a couple of exercises that I often see and often use with my students and in workshops of smaller variety, and I'll leave these up and pass out the PowerPoint for you to see later. This is one of my favorite. Where does my strength lie? And the gist of this one is to get you to reflect on some circumstances that were quite horrendous for you. My goal is to get you to identify 3. The next goal is not to get you to focus on what happened, but what did you do cognitively, emotionally, behaviorally to extricate yourself from that? Because therein is you will find your strength. So with that, I'll end and say thank you very much for the invitation to present. Thank you.
One more time, thank you so much. I was sitting in the back and I'm still processing all of that, but what a wonderful reminder, even as we look around this room, our gifts, our companionship with each other, and the knowledge in our hearts, and the trust and the stillness of being still and knowing that we are with God.